Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and welcome to this wonderful session that we are about to be launching today, which is the Outlier Leadership Program. The BMF was established 44 years ago. Some of us, when it was established, were not even born. Were not even ideas that would be born. And here we are today, involved in the BMF, an organization that has managed to last that long, an organization that has been evolving over years, to try and meet the needs of the time. At the time when the BMF was founded, it was founded as a support group for Black managers, because it was even difficult for Black people to be called managers at the time. They would be called foremen and supervisors and all of that, but not managers. So it was even a bold statement to make, to create an organization that would be called Black Management Forum. And as I said, it evolved over the years to try and meet the needs of each generation and of the time. And I guess it has stood the test of time. And that's why it's still around 44 years later. We still have a strong organization. The mandate of the BMF, the main one, is managerial development. When BMF was established, it was very clear that we needed to support and provide a platform for Black managers to develop and have the necessary skills that they need to lead organizations and and facilitate growth, social economic growth in the country as well. So it is befitting that the BMF will be here today to go back to some of the mandates that it started, to say we need to be developing managers. We need to be developing leadership, managerial leadership. And it's interesting because we have many institutions of learning, higher learning, that are teaching leadership. But very few of them can claim that they have managed to develop leaders and they can identify the leaders that they've developed. Leadership is often it is a concept that is often taught, because all the aspects of management can easily be taught. But with leadership, most of the time, what gets discussed is, what does leadership look like? How do you know when somebody is being a leader versus a manager? And sadly, most institutions, they tend to put management and leadership against each other and make it look like being a manager is almost like a lesser task than being a leader. Leadership is seen as the one thing that everyone should aspire towards, which unfortunately is not, it cannot be correct. And that's why as BMF we reference managerial leadership, because leadership is about influence, it's about serving, whereas management is about creating processes and making sure that things work. You need both, so you can never have one that is better than the other. You need strong management skills, but also you need to be able to then lead and influence and serve people. And those two, you can decide whether you want to be part of the one, you want to do the one and not the other. But it's not that one is better than the other. There isn't one that is better than the other. And it's unfortunate that we sometimes see the two as what you've arrived once you've found yourself in a leadership position. And we see it as that, as a position rather than as an act of influence. And I'm quite excited that today we are here as BMF to occupy a space that I truly believe that it is reserved for the BMF. No one could be in this position to help us navigate the space of leadership and say, what does it look like to lead in a South African context or African context? What is leadership in those contexts? We often talk about the fact that we don't have leadership as a country. We like to emphasize that there's no leadership. Doesn't matter where you go, whether in churches, these days we hear all sorts of stories about what pastors are doing in churches. There's absolutely no leadership. We go to a public sector, it's the same thing. We know private sector, it's the same thing. We are lacking leadership, or we often say we're lacking leadership. We've got the resources that we need, but we struggle with leadership. And we are here today to launch a program that will help us think about those terms of leadership and what does leadership look like in a South African context. Is it possible that we do have the skills and the know-how of leading by virtue of the spaces that we've found ourselves in, what we've overcome as individuals to try and get to where we are today, that we have developed inherent skills that makes us, or some of us at least, leaders. And all we need to do is just to remember that. And is it possible that we can do that? And this program that we are launching today will help us answer some of those questions. But before we can move on with our program, we only have 1 hour really to discuss in detail what the program will be about. I would like to invite our president, Andile Nomlala, to just give us an overview of where, as BMF, where do we see ourselves as BMF at the moment, where we are at the moment, and then where do we see ourselves in the future, and this program that we are launching today, which is the Outlier Leadership Program. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Dr. Vilakazi. Let me start by greeting you, the chairperson of one of our most vibrant and biggest branches in the country. Thank you for hosting us this evening. We're looking forward to the discussion. Let me greet the colleagues at the office. I see Monde is on the panel. President, I must greet you last, not because I don't value you, but because I think we are the generation that is trying to be the light that you were 44 years ago. So it's always best to leave the best for last. Let me greet the fellow members of the BMF and the people that are on the webinar this evening. I'm actually quite delighted, Sibongile, that we are finally launching this program. And for so many years, we call ourselves a managerial leadership development organization, but we never really had, particularly for the top tier managers in the last couple of years, we've never really had a program that would actually be attributed to an action item that BMF does to develop the managerial leadership. So we are pleased and we are pleased with the fact that for many years, President Mafuna and I have even engaged when I was still in Cape Town about such a program. And I'm quite pleased that despite the challenges we had with the lockdown and the COVID and all of those, we finally managed to say that we are ready to launch the program. I want to say about Mafuna that it would be one of a kind in the BMF fold that top tier managers, we're talking executive senior managers and aspirant senior managers, would be for the first time get the privilege and the opportunity to be developed in the managerial leadership space. I myself have just recently enrolled for another leadership program that is mainly about leadership as practice, which is, I know that based on the discussions we spoke about, is quite similar. So I'm looking forward to be one of your first students early next year, and not to just benefit from the sessions and hours that we sit together, but to actually be in class and learn about leadership, particularly the concept of the outliers in the leadership realms. And I think the one discussion we had about it, you defined characters of the likes of President Nelson Mandela, the likes of President Mbeki, who had, by virtue of their leadership styles, were never confined with the normal people of or normal style of leadership. They were different in their way of leading, and they had different traits that are not similar nor synonymous to each other. But with the benefit of hindsight, it turned out that in our very young democracy, those two were one of the greatest leaders we've had. I know that in many other spheres, we have many other different outliers that are great leaders and who are the ones that carry societies, influence organizations, and build companies. Entrepreneurs of great magnitude are amongst those people. They are usually unorthodox. They are usually people that are not afraid to chant new territories. So we're looking forward in the BMF to be taught on a systemic and methodically how such leadership development can be nurtured and be bred as the new normal when it comes to leadership expertise in our country. I think our country is short of characters who have courage and who are not afraid to look in the different direction for solutions. We have been for many years following a very orthodox and a very quite tested way of doing things, which unfortunately hasn't yielded the expected results that we're looking for. So BMF must be on the forefront of being actually the midwife of such leadership, where people would think out of the box, where people would have the tenacity and the courage to beat the odds to become great leaders that we need in this day and age. We are very grateful and we're looking forward to our program early next year. And we're saying to you, President, thank you for never forsaking the BMF, but always be there and in this capacity now to come and help us to build a new generation of great leaders in our country. So we're looking forward as an organization to work with you, and we are grateful that you have always been there to nurture and guide us. Thank you, colleagues, with those few words. Thank you, Swongile, for allowing me the opportunity to say a word or two.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for those beautiful words. And I would like to echo them when it comes to Babu Mafuna, who is the brain behind this program that we are launching today. Babu Mafuna is the founder of the BMF, and we are quite fortunate that as a founder, he is still here with us, as the president saying, like nurturing us and helping us navigate the storms that we sometimes find ourselves in. And as the founder, he is back again with helping us with this program that is actually a fulfillment of a promise that the BMF made all those 44 years ago to enable the development of managers and have this program that can be distinctly known as the BMF program. Once you've gone through it, you can be certified as a leader that possesses the qualities that we want to see in leadership. We don't want to just see individuals who occupy positions, but we want to see leaders, true leaders who can help us take this country to the next level where it deserves to be. We've got all the resources that we need as a country. All we need right now is the right leadership that can take us to those greater heights. And we are quite grateful that Babu Mafuna is here with us today and helping us with this program. He's spent a lot of time developing this program. It's been well researched, well thought through. Actually, when I got exposed to it, I was quite eager that people need to hear about this. It needs to get out. It needs to be seen. It needs to be known, and we need to take people through it because it is so relevant to our country. It is so relevant to our history, relevant to the pride that we actually need to be having as Black leaders specifically. You know, when you start realizing that you've always had it within you, there's something powerful about that. That when you show that you are not waking up to this idea of traits and characteristics that are needed to be a leader. We've always had them. It's the reason that we've been able to navigate all the challenges that we've been able to navigate. And all we need going forward is just to remember and own it, so that then we can be able to take this country and take the organizations that we are leading forward. So, Bab Mafuna, without further ado, I would like to invite you to talk to us about this program. You know, how did it develop? What triggered it? Where is it now? And where are we taking it forward? Where are we going with the program? Can you please just share some of your thoughts around it?
Thank you, Sibongile, Doctor. And thanks, Mr. President. I wish to acknowledge your persistence because when I met with him in Cape Town, he just got hooked onto the idea, one of the elements of outlier leadership, and he never let me go. I was supposed to go back the day that I met with him, and he prevailed that I stayed over, and we continue talking. And I'm sure we will reveal a couple of the issues. So credit and tribute to you, President Nomlala, and I appreciate the leadership you've taken. I want to start by making an upfront commitment. I've been a very shy kid from childhood. I never spoke a lot, but for some reason along the way, I picked up the wrong habits of never knowing when to stop talking. So any one of you that feels like I'm going on and on as I get warmed up, just say stop. I'm not going to be offended at all. Well, we are saying where does it come from? Where does it start? Just a few comments. I think if you take the troubling times that we're living in, it's not only just, you know, the switching off of lights here on Earth as we've known the lights before. If anything, coronavirus has, in a sense, it's a problem of biblical proportions. The writers of elements of the Bible, if they're still around, it would have been possibly one of the books about what God did to humanity. And I'm finding it very interesting that we are launching with the BMF, or into the BMF, the concept of outlier leadership in the year of COVID-19. I think we should mark that because maybe another 45 years after this year, people will be remembering that this thing was launched in the year of coronavirus. We have a crisis of leadership, not only in South Africa. We have a crisis of leadership the world over. But there's no point to be gained in us, you know, passing blame or making fun of, you know, the stupid leadership that we're seeing being shown around, showcased the world over. We have to take ownership, as Dr. Sibongile Vilakazi said. We need to own the problem because we are responsible or we have been responsible for promoting the notion that leadership, like marriage, you don't need to be trained. Nobody trains you in marriage. You just turn 16 or 18, or maybe even 14. You get a husband or you get a wife, and then you get on with it. That's how leadership has been handed down through the ages. It's like, you know, the way you cultivate mushroom. You take manure, put it in the dark room, and a few days later you check, you'll find this mushroom. I think we need to move away from that. We can't continue waiting for someone to bring or to switch on the light for us. The light has already been switched on, we just are not seeing. I think when one of the milestones in 1977 or 78 thereabout, I visited the US. We had already started with this, exploring the concept, it was 78, the concept of the BMF. And I'd been invited by a group of Black Americans that had come visiting to have a look at apartheid Upfront and what the damage it was doing in South Africa, or to Black people. And they invited me that if you ever find yourself in the US, please come and visit us, we will reciprocate. And indeed, I put aside money and I went over there. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but two of the places I visited, one was in Washington. I was hosted by the Robert Russo Foundation. Now, this goes many years back. I didn't know about Robert Russo Morton. What I knew was Agriwa Africa and Booker T. Washington. But Dr. Broders Butler did an itinerary for me. And that itinerary from New York, it took me over to Tuskegee University, which was a Tuskegee Institute, which was founded, among others, by Booker T. Washington. And I wanted to see this because I'd read quite a little bit about Booker T. Washington. What kind of person? What is it that he did during the slavery time? And when I got there, they gave me a book and a speech that he had delivered in 1895, that was 225 years ago, when he gave a speech to a predominantly white audience at the Cotton State and International Exposition in Atlanta. The speech was called by detractors of Booker T. Washington. It was called the Atlanta Compromise. Now, just a line from this speech. He borrowed a quotation from Herman Melville's book, Moby Dick. I think a lot of you will have heard or read Moby Dick. In Moby Dick, Melville tells of a story of two ships at sea. And the one ship was lost, and it was in the Atlantic Ocean. And the crew, some of them were dying, and they saw another ship going in an opposite direction. So they put up a canvas with a message, "Water, water, we are starving." And the other ship looked at them. The captain of the other ship said, "Cast your buckets down where you are." And these people didn't understand. So the second message came up, the third message came up. And then they kept showing them, "Cast your bucket where you are. Finally, the captain of the troubled ship cast their bucket, and indeed, they found that the water is what you call potable water, that it was not salt water, it was drinkable. In other words, they were at the mouth of the Amazon River. Why am I putting this cast your water, your bucket where you are? And how does it apply to leadership? Africa in general, and South Africa in particular, and it's a sad comment that even after Mandela's passing, we continue to wait for someone to come and help sort out a problem. We are like a child who hasn't been taught or hasn't noticed that unless he or she washes their face, nobody's going to wash their face. When Booker T. Washington spoke about or told the story in the context of his own community, in the South, Black community, he was saying to the white farmers, the slave owners, that please stop going overseas looking for cheap white labor. The American blacks, the African Americans that have looked after your lands, dug all your minerals, built your cities and everything, they are available. Why do you ignore them and go overseas? Cast your bucket right where you are. The Black Americans are ready to do that. Now, fast forward 225 years later to where we are. I am saying, let's stop looking up to somebody to light our leadership candle. Let's cast our bucket where we are. Now, many of you have read Nelson Mandela's books the same way that you read novels, or you were more maybe precocious, wanting to know what he did when he was in prison, or get to understand what is he all about. And it's a very good, I mean, his Long Walk to Freedom reads very well like a good novel. It's a real life story and so forth. But you could miss the message completely if you didn't realize that from the beginning of his book, Nelson Mandela is planting a seed, is doing what we call cathedral-minded building. He's like those people that build in the old days. They used to build cathedrals. Someone would come up with a plan for a cathedral. They start putting together the material. And along the way, the one that started the idea of building the cathedral hands over to somebody, either they died, someone takes over, they start building the foundation. The one that was putting together the foundation, they die in the process. So there is a cathedral like that in Barcelona. You can Google it. What is that again? I forget the name to come back. This cathedral, they started building it, I think, around 1826. It's not completed. It's not completed. People are still building. The guy that started building it, Claudio Gaudi, he lived in this cathedral. People used to go in there to help him. But people actually didn't even know that he was the guy who was responsible for building this cathedral. It so happened one day he came out of the cathedral, I guess blinded by the sunlight, and he was run over by a tram. And he died later. And when he died, people didn't even know it was the guy that was responsible for building the cathedral. They thought he was a pauper, and actually they buried him in a pauper's grave. And people used to make fun of him when they came to help him build the cathedral. They would ask him, when are you going to finish this thing that you're building? And he would say to them, don't worry, my client is not in a hurry. Nelson Mandela, I think he must have heard about Gwadi, because along the books that he wrote, there is a clear impression you'll get that he understood very well that what he was starting wasn't just delivering democracy. What Mandela was talking about was putting together what has now firmly been acknowledged globally as the universal moral leadership concept or brand. Mandela's concept of moral leadership is brand new, is vibrant, and it is not borrowed from the rich nations or the strong and powerful nations. And it's not only comprised of the experiences of the poor people. But the important thing about Mandela's leadership model is that it starts right here, the cradle of human life, the cradle of leadership, because humanity started right here in Africa, across over there. It's not long ago that it started, and it went all over the world, right? So Mandela is reminding us that. And one of the things he's sorry about, he keeps apologizing, was that as he was growing up, he never had enough time or never had the resources to get access to books that would have taught him about true African history, what we actually call the prehistory. That is the history before contact and conquest, right? Contact with the West and conquest by colonizers. Most people make the mistake that Africa's history started when the Romans and others and the Europeans started, flooding into Africa and then raping us for our minerals and other resources. Africa had a history long before that. If you read Nelson Mandela, he says when he was invited for the first time to visit Africa, when he was training to be the soldier and the leader of Umkhonto weSizwe, one of the countries he went to was Egypt. And he says he spent for 2 days, he went around sightseeing, but the one day he spent at a museum. And he says, it was not one of these fake museums you see around. It was a museum where I realized that Africans were doing serious artifacts, serious craft, serious stuff, whilst the Westerners were still messing around up in the trees. Check it, you'll see it in his book. So he says, I needed to understand the history, because Mandela understood this. If you don't have a history, if you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're coming from, you can never have a clear sense of leadership direction. So that was the one piece that Mandela talked about in terms of the history. The second part was, he was very proud of the African worldview, that Africans have got a view of the world. The view of the world long before they were influenced or theirs was taken over by the Westerners. They have a view about God. They have a view about the cosmos. They have a view about, for that matter, when they were moving from Africa, conquering the world, The Southern Cross was their guide. They understood as they move across Africa. They could tell you by looking at the Southern Cross whether they were going to have La Nina or the other one, whether they were going to have wet summers or dry summers. They understood. If you go to New Zealand and Australia, even South America, the southernmost countries like us, the people before the Westerners took over understood the Southern Cross, and they used this as a guide. It wasn't just a source of myth and mythology. They understood that this was a guide. They could tell you the time of the day by simply looking at that. So Mandela understood there is an African worldview, sans the white one. We need to understand that if we are serious about building this leadership going forward, that it is not predicated, it's not influenced entirely by what we borrowed from the Westerners. It is based on Africa and its definition of its own place in the sun. The next piece was the history. I'm not talking about the prehistory, I'm talking about the history, particularly our troubled history through colonial era. And that history we are forgetting because the preachers, the missionaries, together with their brethren who carried arms, did everything to try and erase from the African mind the African concept of history. They were not interested in knowing what went on before our history. Excuse me. Now, it is important because they tell you, African scholars will tell you, that a man or woman without knowledge of their history is like an empty vessel. They have nothing to tell you. They have nothing to teach you. So history is important. Allied to the question of history is the issue of values. Now, a lot of modern day authors or experts on leadership, Ronald Heifetz, the author of Leadership Without Easy Answers, or Leadership on the Line. One of the things he says is that leadership is based on values, is influenced by values. Without values, leadership is empty. Now, this is very important because a lot of us, we are experts on American-based leadership. The values that we suck out, we imbibe, we drink out of the concepts of leadership that we've come to know are American values. And unfortunately, no matter how smart a leadership concept you might be attracted towards, if it's not African, it doesn't fly very well here, because the values that we have in South Africa and in Africa in general, those values are not necessarily consistent with American values. So when we try and teach or learn leadership, American-based leadership, it's a hit or miss, because we second guess the values. And maybe those of us, the Skokians amongst us, those of us who are the elite, have read, have traveled a little bit, are familiar with American values. So maybe we can make a little bit of sense. But we can't hope going into the future that we'll always have to be first literate in American values before or at the exclusion of our African values. You can see today young people are coming to the fore, the next generation that are taking over have no time for foreign values. They are pushing out African indigenous values. So where are we? Mandela also shows us something which I interpret as this. The power of socialization in bringing up or developing leaders. Throughout his books, when you travel with Nelson Mandela from Tunu, Mvezo to Fort Hare and other colleges in between, he's always telling you that the things that he learned, things that made a lot of impression upon him, they were not things that he learned in the classroom. There were things that he learned from smarter peers, associates, from other kids. Yeah? He talks about this young lady, I keep forgetting her name. When he was at high school or college, she made fun of him because he was wearing shoes for the first time. Yeah? And he told me this story, by the way, that he was so angry that if there was no teachers in the classroom, in the room where they were registering, he would have gone up and beaten up because boys and girls laughed at him, and then he took off the shoes, never to wear them again. But this is a funny part. This girl that laughed at him became his first love, his first woman whose leadership he appreciated. And he keeps going back to this woman in his life, that she was one that he could treat as an equal, maybe even treat her as superior to him, because she's the one that told him, Mandela, don't worry about being a counselor to the traditional chiefs of the Transkei. You are a BA. You got to go to university and become a BA. And he says, what is a BA? She said, don't worry, you'll find out when you go to university. Now, what I'm saying is that most of us who are here today, and as I've seen over the years in the BMF, most of us have come through that. And that which we want to teach is that you don't learn only in the classroom. The most valuable lessons you learn by exposure, through association, being coached and groomed by your peers. And those of you, Sibongile and the rest of the team, we've been running a few orientation classes in the last few weeks. You will have seen, we ran a little story about, a case study about how did you, for that matter, make sure that by the end of the year, you were in the top 10 of the class, whereas the first exams, the first test, you were at the bottom quartile of the class. We asked the question, what did you do? And who told you? Who taught you to move up to the top? You taught yourself because you learned by associating with the smart kids in the class, yeah, or even in the playground. By associating with the kids that were smarter than you, you would move. And that's where it makes a difference. Throughout Mandela's life journey, he's always telling you about the people that made a hell of an impact on him and a big difference. So going forward, these are some of the things that I am encouraging us to do. Our textbook is Mandela's Life. The leadership module, the root construct of our leadership, what we call our outlier leadership. The root construct is moral leadership as is taught by Nelson Mandela. By the way, we are not teaching new leadership material. The leadership models that we are basing our more outlier leadership on, they range from the despised, discredited, so-called command and control leadership model. That is the inherited model. Yeah, that is the big man model. That is the one where kings and queens and chiefs came from. There is still value. There is some value in that. And Mandela keeps reminding us, don't just bury it, because if you go to Botswana next door here, their traditional chiefs and headmen and so forth, their system is incorporated into Botswana democracy. In South Africa, we've given them a house, wrapped them up the way that the British have done to their lords. They've got the House of Lords, where you find all the old folks who inherited their position. They sit in the House of Lords. They make very little impact to society. That's what we've done in South Africa. We've got to change that, because we come through that. We come through the traditional leadership way. On the far extreme, there are Western leadership models. One or two of those that you will find mentioned in Mandela's book, one of those is adaptive leadership. That is leadership that teaches you how to adjust, how to adapt, the same way that you adapted when you went to school. You learn very quickly that if I keep to the friendship of these low achievers, I'm not going to get anywhere. So you stepped out, you abandoned that group, you attached yourself to a new group. You were adaptive. The second part of leadership, you find Mandela talks about it, is what most of you are talking about these days, authentic leadership. Authenticity stems from your knowledge or your ability to understand who you are as a human being, your history, the history of your clan, the history of your family, the history of your family, your people, your own personal history. If you don't understand that, you're not going to get very far. So authentic leadership requires you to know who you are, understand your demons, understand those things that rob you of your self-confidence, and so forth. So beyond adaptive leadership, moral leadership or ethical leadership, adaptive leadership, there are many others that we have borrowed from when we build this outlier leadership. Now, very briefly, why outlier leadership? It's called outlier leadership because over the years, particularly during those of us who endured during the hardships of living and growing and working in an apartheid society, we were the laughing stock of the world. I remember in 1975, I went across to Europe, and then I was in the Netherlands. I went to get money from the hotel, from the bank, and I submitted my passport. The people behind the cashier, it was at a window, they came around and they were laughing, they were jeering, they were spitting at my passport. And there were some black people there. Later, I got to learn that one of those people there was someone who shares my name, was Eric Mafuna. Eric was at this bank, and they called him. Do you know this guy? He looked at me, and I didn't know Eric. I know that my father told me about Eric Mafuna, but I didn't know him. They threw my cash at me, threw my passport, and I walked out of there with my tail between my legs, and I was very, very resentful. Is that for me to stop? Are you saying I must stop?
Not really, Baba. We're just saying that 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm wrapping up. Actually. So I was talking about where the outlier concept came from. It was very clear during apartheid days that South Africa was an unwelcome nation in the world. Many African countries did not want to have anything to do with South Africa. It was actually the country where there were white Africans. Yeah, for a long time, they even forgotten that we were there. You wouldn't be allowed to get off a plane at Nairobi airport. I mean, many times when I was traveling to Europe and America, I never even bothered to stop to try and get off the plane, because we were persona non grata as Black people. So from there, I started asking the question, why is it that we treated it as a different country? Of course, apartheid made us a pariah. Yeah, we were the skunk of the world. We were not welcome anywhere. Now, the world was not interested in whether you were Black or white if you carried a South African passport. When you carried a passport and you were Black, the perception was that you must have been an agent of the white government. You must have been an agent of apartheid. So they were not interested in you. The fact that there were those of us who were going out there were not agents of apartheid, it didn't really matter. So we were punished twice, yeah, twice than our white counterparts. Very briefly, where the concept of outlier came from was when I was doing a study for one of those, I think, international marketing agency or something like that. They were asking us to help them understand why South Africa was not making as much impact in terms of generating a direct foreign investment. And the United Nations, UNCTAD, published a study on Africa and FDI, foreign direct investment, in 2005. And this study said most African countries are identical in many ways from an economic point of view. They are less attractive and so forth and so forth. However, South Africa is different from them. It is something of an outlier. This piqued my interest at what kind of country would be referred to as an outlier. So I started scratching around creatively. I come from advertising. Started putting together this concept of an outlier country. And then things started, working, that we were the pariah, we were the southernmost country, we were, together with Ethiopia, we were the cradle of humankind. So you can see the story begins to become very exciting. When BRICS was started, we were invited. We still are the only country in BRICS that represents Africa. We were the first African country to be invited to join the Security Council of the United Nations. The funny part, we were the last country on this continent to get our uhuru, to get our freedom. So when you take all those kinds of things, oh, by the way, add on top of that, we had the archetypal or the quintessential outlier leader in Nelson Mandela. One who comes around once in a million years' time. So tribute to Nelson Mandela, the #1 outlier leader. Yeah. The one that defied conventions, locked up for 27 years, comes out of there without bitterness, comes out of there with a solution that is going to deliver democracy to South Africa. So when I looked around, and by the way, I shared this with him. I told him that I'm working on this thing. It's outlier. And I'm going to call it outlier leadership. And you are the champion. He said, I want to see the book. Unfortunately, he left before I wrote the book. I'm halfway writing the book. So that is the concept of the outlier. There are several core concepts, foundational concepts in this. I am not going to bore you with the detail, but the colleagues that I've been working with are going to take you through some of them. Just to the 10 that are top of mind, I've mentioned the history. I've mentioned place, your country, your place in the sun. I've mentioned the idea of the personal agency. Mandela teaches us that. You need to understand, you must answer the question, why are you here? What is your mission? Why were you put here? You need to understand that. The fourth, the era, the time during which you got your own understanding, your defining moment. Most of us, it was apartheid. It was our era. But the era changes from group to group. Then there's the issue of what they call personal crucible. I won't go into the details. I'm sure the colleagues will explain to you what crucibles are. These are predicaments. These are catastrophes that happen in your life. When they happen, you think, this is bad luck, it was derailing me, and so forth and so forth. What you don't realize that those crucibles are part of your growing up. Look up in your Google something called the buffalo thorn, or what the Afrikaners call the wachabiki, or the wait a moment tree. There's an African story attached to that. That is about the crucible. The same together, it goes together with the concept of curve. That is, Charles Handy has got a book. One of his books is called The Second Curve. The first curve is called the sigmoid curve. And I'm not going to go into the detail that we will delve into details. The other stuff that I've borrowed from Warren Bennis, the father of leadership, the issues about leadership capacity. Neoteny is a concept that says, like Nelson Mandela, most of us didn't understand why he had this love for children. Nelson Mandela understood that you need to make sure that you are relevant, or the ideas you stand for are relevant to successive generation, to the generation of people that come after you. I've talked about what Mandela calls the community, the community of reciprocity. That is an African way, that's Ubuntu, okay? Then cathedral thinking attached about that, and the developmental process attached about this. Sorry to rush you through, but I hope I've sketched for you why outlier leadership. Here is the trick. Until and unless we adopt outlier leadership as a tool to groom the next future generations of leaders, we are going to continue like millions around the world who go into marriage and hoping to make the best out of it. Leadership is not like marriage. You've got to prepare people for it. And it requires us as Africans in South Africa to start questioning what kind of Africans are we? Why are we here? What is our culture? What's our history? What is our value? What are our values? So when you start looking at this, for those of you who are going to be joining the program next year, you're not going to regret this. You will thank me many years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Baba, for that. Personally, I'm super excited for this program. You know, and I like what you just said, that the analogy of casting the buckets right where you are. You know, most of the time we forget that we do have the solutions. They're here with us, and we forget that sometimes. And thank you so much for reminding us that, and especially this program that is so well researched, that is showing us exactly that we do have the solutions. And most importantly, that leadership is it's not a jacket that you put on, you know, and then act out what needs to be acted out. It's who you are. You can't separate it from who you are. And this is what this program is trying to show us, that you have to work on yourself more than you work on the techniques of the job that you might be doing wherever you are leading. It's more about the person that you are, your character, your values, as Baba Mafuna has mentioned. You can't separate that. And we are really grateful for this program. Looking forward to enrolling and go through it and remember again, why is it that we've made it so far, and why is it that we have such an asset in Mandela that we are not owning, and until somebody else somewhere across the world decides to own Mandela, and then suddenly we feel aggrieved that why are you taking what is ours when we have it right here with us. So thank you so much for that reminder, Baba Mafuna. We've got Monde to take us through some of the concepts that this program will be touching on when you enroll, for those who are planning to be enrolling. Monde is the head of advocacy and thought leadership at the BMF. He is behind this program as well. He's helped us put it together, and he coordinates us every now and then in making sure that we are coming through and when we're attending the meetings that we need to be attending. So he's been really driving this idea of bringing this program for the BMF and ensuring that the BMF owns it rightfully, as we should be owning this program. Monde, can you please come through and just take us through some of the concepts that the program will be touching on?
Thank you, Doc. Good evening, colleagues. Good evening, Baba Mafuna. It's a privilege to share a platform with you. It really is an honor. I'm truly humbled to be in your presence. It's really inspiring. President Nomlala, it's a privilege to borrow the platform with you as the current president of the BMF. Thank you, President. And thank you to the colleagues in the background who've been assisting. Doc is giving me too much credit. You can't credit me for anything, Doc. Honestly, you can't do that. We must credit Baba Mafuna for dropping the seeds of leadership throughout at least the past 5 years or so in the BMF. And as he rightfully said, the current president as well, you know, he dropped a seed in his lap and it germinated. Baba Mafuna also dropped the seed at the BMF National Conference a couple of years ago when there was a stalwart panel and he spoke a bit about this leadership thing. Again, you know, he dropped the seed as well. So it really is a collective effort. And indeed, we are really truly humbled that we're in the presence of Baba Mafuna. I also think that Baba has definitely given everything. So I'm really not going to say much. I'm just going to say one or two things so that maybe, Doc, you can entertain one or two inputs from the floor. Of course, we don't want to overshare things. We don't want to give everything now, but we want to just whet your appetite on this very unique concept and perspective on leadership. I think, firstly, one of the comments I had made when we were doing these sessions was that one of the challenges of leadership broadly is that we do not like to look at ourselves in depth personally. Leadership is always seen as an external activity, something we do on the outside with very little internal work. But the outlier leadership approach is really trying to really dig deep into our personal space, a space where we don't want anyone to tamper with, really looking at our history, really looking at what makes us tick as individuals, and what makes South Africa an outlier country, which is a personal thing as well, to embrace the fact that we are a different breed of leaders. And BMF is a prime example of what Bob Mafuna calls, in terms of a concept of stars, right? So he speaks about a star not wanting to shine alone. Stars wants to shine with other stars. When you see a star shining brightly alone, it doesn't have the kind of effect that it ought to have. And BMF is a prime example of how different outlier leaders of that era, who were stars, wanting to move with other stars at that level, and brought us this kind of BMF, bequeathed this kind of BMF we have today, a BMF of stars. Some might want to call it a middle class, elitist organization that is not, that is an elite organization, but not elitist. You've heard those arguments before in history, but truly speaking, BMF is a shining star and has many stars within its ambit, within its arsenal. And so the Outlier program then unearths why it is that you want to move with stars and run with stars. And I think that the concept of the idea plays a very pivotal role. And former President Nelson Mandela, that phrase of never and never again, when you start unpacking it, you begin to understand that it's not something that began when he was actually preparing to speak. You can tell that it's something that is deeply ingrained, deeply etched in his thought process, that never and never again will we endure or should ever endure and taint this beautiful country. And so then the challenge then becomes, then what is that common thread, that idea from an early age that that you are wrestling with, that you cannot fully comprehend? You don't know how to express it, you don't know how to apply it, but you really cannot escape yourself, because every time you think about it, you want to action it and do something about it. And the outlier leadership brings that to the fore, that everybody has something that makes them tick in terms of the one idea or the one truth that they want to live by, the one fact that they want to change. And during that era, changing the fact of oppression through apartheid, many of these bright stars wanted to change that. And you could tell through their behavior, how they agitated through the BMF for affirmative action, Black economic empowerment, the development of leadership, that kind of persistence. You could tell that it came from a deeply personal space, that idea that Black people can lead, Black people should lead, Black people deserve to lead. And so what is it in our era today that is making us want to be driven to change the landscape as we see it? What is making us restless today that makes us not sleep that night? That one common thread, and that is something that needs to be unearthed and unpacked. Baba did mention briefly crucibles, and crucibles are linked with the idea, because some ideas are birthed by crucibles, or birthed by misfortunes, birthed by circumstances that you've gone through. And as a result of going through hardships, you begin to be shaped in a certain way, and then an idea is birthed in most cases. And then the question becomes, you should not therefore allow a crucible to go to waste. So if you go through a hardship or you go through a challenge, the question becomes, what have you learned? And the outlier leadership brings forth those personal questions. What are you learning? What have you learned? And what idea comes forth from all of that? And all these stars that I keep referring to, as they were going through these crucibles, ideas were birthed. BMF was birthed as a result of crucibles. Black consciousness was birthed as a result of crucibles, etc., etc. And again, after idea is birthed, and because there's different eras as well that you live through as a leader, there's a concept that we call the curve. And the curve is all about how do you reimagine yourself? How do you reshape yourself? How do you repurpose yourself? How do you chart your way again? How do you reinvent yourself as a result of entering a different era of leadership? So again, the focus of personal development, being fully aware of your space, your influence, and your direction. And the person you were 10 years ago, Outlier Leadership is saying you should not be the same leader you were 10 years ago. You're supposed to reimagine, repurpose, reroute, redirect, recalibrate yourself. And after that, the last issue Baba did mention, cathedral thinking. And the term, Baba, I think you're looking for was Sagrada Familia. Sagrada Familia from Barcelona. And it's a pleasure. And you look at that cathedral leadership, and one of the things that I take out of it from when I started being exposed to it is the fact that we're not building for ourselves. So we're not leading for ourselves. We're building, in other words, we're not the intended recipients of our own leadership in the present. Future generations are the intended beneficiaries. So in other words, we should not look at leadership as benefiting ourselves and perpetuating what we want, but because it teaches us that we must build brick by brick. And the guy who started building it in the 1800s long died, but he understood that he must pass it on to somebody else and that he will expire one day. And understanding that we will one day expire actually makes us humble. It's an antidote to arrogance, to know that somebody else must take over from what you're building. Again, BMF is a prime example. We've seen so many different kinds of leadership come through the BMF, come and go. And everyone has been putting in their work and brick on brick that we can actually point throughout the past 44 years. And next year, BMF celebrates 45 years. That proves that cathedral thinking exists within the lifeblood and the DNA of BMF. You make your difference, you shape something, you create space for others, that you fully understand that you are not the intended beneficiary of your leadership efforts. Somebody is. And today, we are the intended beneficiaries of the work done by Baba Mafuna and many of his colleagues who are here today because of that. And they have bequeathed BMF. From henceforth, what we do is not for us, but for our children and their children. Doc, I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Monde. That was very powerful. And yes, as much as there are stars around you that have made this possible, I think we can rightly own that every idea, as much as it can be planted, it needs somebody to keep on watering and then move it forward. And you've been that person for this program, and we appreciate you for doing that. So you've also just put your own brick. I think you should be proud of that. Own it, Monde. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I concede, Doc. I concede. I follow your leadership.
Okay. Yeah, no, but thank you so much for all those presentations, and I'm hoping that it is clearer what this program that we will be introducing next year. Well, we've already introduced it. It's that it will kick off next year, January, to have the people who've raised their hand to say that they want to enroll and then take it forward. So if there are any questions based on the presentations that have been made, please, you may raise your hand or send a question on the chat group. I see there are so many comments already, but I will take some hands at the moment. If there's anything that is unclear, you just want to know more, what is about the program, the dates, how it's going to be structured and all of that, you can ask. I think Monde will be very good at answering those kind of questions. But Mafuna is also here, and he will give us just some of the background. So any questions, any hands? I'm not seeing any for now, but based on the chat, what I will read some of the comments that have been made on the chat. Interesting point of view on leadership. I would like to know if the outlier leadership as a Mandela inspired concept is a form of African leadership. If so, are there specific references to leadership traits that emanate from South African groups such as AmaXhosa, as opposed to the whole country just as individuals? Interesting one. I don't know if Mafuna or Monde, you want to take that one? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, I think it's self-evident that as we begin to work through the various communities in South Africa, you're going to find that we actually, the leadership models, the values, even the culture, they're very identical. Let me give you an example quickly. I was talking once to Jakavula, who was at the Transnet once, and I was telling him the story when I was growing up that we used to go, before we go to school in the morning, my mother used to say, go up to the well and fetch water. We'll go up in very quickly, it's about 1 kilometer or so, come back with water. She would take that water, sift it out, clean it out, and put it in a clay pot or a calabash, which is put on the side of a heart, which is in a cold place, and the water is covered, and either a mug or a gourd is put on top. That water was not for us to drink. That was meant for travelers. So that anybody that's walking past the village, they didn't have to ask for permission. They stopped, drank, and covered the thing and continued. And I was bragging about this, is how, this was a vendor stuff. And he says, what are you talking about? In my village, wherever the village was, I forgot. He says, we used to do exactly the same thing. So in South Africa, because we were kept far apart, we tend to think that the Zulus have got, a unique culture. The Xhosas have got a unique culture. Even the Kwe, the Bushmen and the Sands, when you look, it is identical. We come from the same cultural construct. There's nothing unusual. There's nothing strange. It's just that across time, across regions, there were different interpretations of the same thing.
Thanks, Baba. I hope that answer was clear to me, that we sometimes want to focus on tribes as South Africans and sometimes as Africans in general. Meanwhile, we are all African, eh? and our values show you that. It might be said in different languages, but it's the same thing that we find ourselves in. So thank you for that response. Another one here, I'm absolutely excited about the program. Thank you, Baba Mafuna, for the overview. Thank you, BMF. A well-articulated premise of the program. Thank you, Dade Mafuna. Dade Mafuna has been a leadership mentor at one of the divisions in Transnet, and his approach has at all times been out of this world, to say the least. Thank you for that comment. Thank you, BMF. I have been waiting for this program. You see, we've all been waiting. Fresh, authentic, practical example of lived life lived. From Ganyani Kubele, very empowered with the presentation. Thank you, Baba Mafuna. Thank you for this session, BMF and Baba Mafuna. This is so much needed program and a legacy for generations to come. Cathedral leadership and thinking makes absolute sense. It keeps us in tune with our mortal nature as leaders. So these are some of the comments that are on the chat. I'm assuming that there are no further questions because I'm not seeing any questions. I saw something about how long is the program. I'm not seeing it now, but I saw there was a question at some point about that. How long will the program be? Oh, yes, there's another. Yeah, here it is. What is the broad structure of the program, duration, frequency, and engagement, etc.?
Well, this is something we have to structure because there are cost and time implications. And I'm not going to go into those details, but for starters, if we will need to know who is coming forward, what is their profile, what are their academic exposure, how far did you go at school, at work, what kind of work are you doing, so that you don't just have huge classes of 50, 60 people or whatever the numbers are. You need to grade this according to the prior knowledge, prior exposure that people have. I believe that if you did 10 sessions of this program, you are well on your way somewhere. If you ask the people at Transnet, a lot of them have attended this program for over 18 months, 2 years, and you still hadn't completed. So there are different levels. There's what I call the introductory piece, there's the intermediate piece, and there's the advanced piece. The advanced piece is where we are now talking about, senior people, one-on-ones, rather than huge sessions. We're talking about small teams, or what are called small groups sessions. You're talking there about 5 to 8 or 10 people. It's a cohort. You work with those people. They work quite through quickly. The challenge here is there's a lot of reading. There's a lot of homework. There are a lot of case study. So I think we are going to have to develop cohorts rather than have large groups. I think also within the BMF, I believe that we shouldn't just do these sessions for those that have enrolled for the formal program. I think there's the leadership development side, but also there's the forum side, which is your advocacy piece, so that those people that are going through this material can go back into their organization and run advocacy programs on leadership. All I can say to you right now tonight is that I can tell you now, you ain't seen nothing yet. If you think what I sketched is dynamite, wait until you see the programs themselves. They're driven by how much you are prepared to work yourself. They're driven by how much you collaborate with other people. And also, from time to time, stopping and checking whether you are on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I guess those who are interested, can they please just email the office and leave their details so that we can be able to know who are they, what is their profile, and then how do we invite them to the groups next year? Because as Baba Mafuna has said, it's different levels. So depending on where you are, what level you are, you'll be part of a specific group versus another group. So you will have to send us your details, send the office your details, and then we follow up with you on that. So, and then there's another question here that is asking, oh, okay, it's not a question, it's a comment. Thank you so much, BMF, for this session. I'm really interested to do the full program next year. Yes, we welcome you and we look forward to seeing you. Please send us your details if you're interested. Another one, it's saying shaping the leadership from the root, from the African concept and its roots, and yet into the future vision. Powerful thinking there, Baba Mafuna, and well done to BMF. So, and then someone else is already leaving. or this is the from BMF, we're leaving our details there. You can send, if you are interested, please send to bmfcommunications@bmfonline.co.za. Please send your details there.
Sibongile,
BMF Communication.
Sibongile, can I add something quickly?
Okay.
And that is, we are not only interested in people that are attending the programs, those that are coming to the programs and they take it very seriously, we would like to encourage them to take classes, to lead classes, or to lead case study sessions and so forth, or discussion sessions, largely because the part of the success, the secret of success in this leadership development is based on the knowledge that the best way to learn is by teaching. So I would like to encourage BMF members to enroll, particularly to enroll so that they can go and teach other people. They don't have to sit through, 20 sessions. The material is there, we will guide, and then they can teach. Lastly, I would like to see my colleagues, the stalwarts, to come forward. There's nobody who can be much smarter or they know it all. If they know it all, they have been exposed, show the humility, come forth and serve with us.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I don't know if there are still any more questions or comments, or if there's anything to add, Monde, there. Do you have anything to add before we wrap up?
Right. I think Ubaba has kind of given the fuller picture of how we'd want to move forward. I also think that the programs department led by Shumani Kwashaba, who's also done a sterling job in putting this thing together. There'll be further information out there that will go out to members and out in the public, as much as we've sent out the BMF communication at BMF Online. But when we get to the formalities of when we're putting it together and separating the classes based on information, they will be running with that process as well. So that detail will come out through the programs department led by Shumane, and then things will be more streamlined in terms of the starting points in 2021, et cetera. So I just wanted to just add that element as well, that there's a fully fledged programs department at the head office that is driving the different programs that we have, and the Outlier Leadership is now an additional program that is coming, and they will definitely then be communicating in time and with the different timelines as well, and what they expect, and and taking it from there.
Okay, great. Thanks, Monde. Okay.
Program Director, last one from me. I think, as a matter of courtesy, we need, together with the BMF, to approach the Mandela Foundation.
Okay.
And just that we are doing this. It won't be nice for them to hear from the newspapers that we're doing this work, but I think just to go and share with them and show them how we are interpreting Mandela's work and how we are keeping the dream of Nelson Mandela alive. Thank you.
I think that's absolutely great.
Yeah,
I'm sure they would like to partner.
Yes, Dr. Vilakazi. I think that's a very important request. Monde, do take note so that we make that approach.
Yes.
Yes, we'll do that. We'll do that, President.
Okay. Before, I wanted to ask you, President, to have some closing comments as well. But before that, there are two more questions that haven't been answered. One is, I appreciate the setup question. Will it be possible to enroll in this program if you are already studying MBA?
Yeah, even if you were doing a PhD. because I believe that you would not have studied any of these things that we are talking about.
Okay,
It
great.
just will help. It will help if we get people with advanced academic training. Then the work we give them is different. It will match the level of work that they're doing.
Yes. Yes. So, and then the next question is the program going to be in person or Zoom, since we are still in COVID-19?
That's Monday.
Yes, so it's definitely going to be online. Of course, the advantage now of the area we're in, it will have a much broader reach countrywide in terms of our membership. If we took the traditional route only, you can imagine the administrative and the logistical nightmare of traveling to different provinces. So for now, definitely everyone is moving things online, and it's going to be much easier for these sessions to happen online. If and when it is possible to do contact sessions, because we know Baba also wants those kind of sessions, we will do that. But definitely what is priority is for it to roll out countrywide on an online platform.
Okay, great. I think I don't see any more questions. I don't see any hands. So I guess it would be good for us to wrap up. Oh, there's another question just coming through. Will the program be linked to or accredited with one of the higher learning institutions?
We have been deliberating about this from 1998, whether we should link up with academic institutions. I guess we will have to be guided by the way things develop. In the past, we were not able to go for accreditation simply because until recently, the world over, nobody has been certified or got a degree on leadership. It is not it's not that genre of teaching. This leadership is in the mode of that we call autobiographical leadership. But I have no problem looking at South African universities, business schools, and so forth, develop programs that can be offered through there. But I think they would have to be part of whatever you are studying. I would be very uneasy if we were to teach people and then we certify them as you have got a degree in leadership. I don't think that will wash. People will laugh at you. But let's work at it and see. I know that in Free State, one of the institutions there was very keen to take over. I know the University of Venda are interested in this. My own alma mater, University Teflop, University of Limpopo, all these departments would like to, universities, we would like to do something around it. So I think it's the negotiations that we'll have to do with them. But I would hate for this program to be thrown there and join the other kind of leadership programs that are being taught at university. This is not, you will see when you go through, this is not a university type material. It's hands-on, it's fast-moving, it's experimental, it's adaptive, a lot of research that you have to do. By the way, the material that we have even today, I would love to see people taking the stuff that we have already on record. I would like to see a lot of PhDs. I'd like to see, thesis done based on the work that we've done. There's so much that we've given, and you don't have to pay for that.
That's wonderful, and I think we should dream. We should allow ourselves to dream and start building an institution that we can name the BMF School of Leadership. You know,
Yeah.
partnerships are good and they're great, and we should partner where possible, but also we should build and build our own.
You know,
and this could be an
when you
opportunity
go
for
to
them.
Harvard, for example, where we got the backbone of our leadership program, not the outlier so much, but when you go to Harvard, they teach leadership from the basis of a number of high-powered American institutions that have come together under the umbrella of the Kennedy School of Government. Now, in this Kennedy School of Government, it is situated on campus at Harvard University, but it is not an exclusive property of Harvard University. Now, they offer the program as an elective. They offer this leadership program for people who are studying whatever else. And they are very tough. Out of 800 applicants, they end up with something like 40.
Sure. So those are the things we should aspire towards. But yeah, with that said, I would like to wrap up and thank everyone for attending the session. It's really been great, and the presentations that have been made, I personally am looking forward to enrolling in the course. I remember when Baba Mafuna introduced it to me, it was just so freeing to realize that there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me, you know. I'm an outlier, because we go through life with all these experiences that sometimes make you feel like, why can't I belong anyway? You know, why is it that everywhere I go, I create trouble? And you think there's something wrong with you. And until when he introduced me to the concept, and it felt good to know that there's nothing wrong. Actually, we should be building on those character traits, because they are the traits that will take us to the next level. So I'm looking forward to seeing more and more of you also having the same aha experiences that I've had. So please come on board. In closing, I would like to invite the president, as he opened the session for us, to also just close with a few words, and having listened to everything that has been listened to in the engagement, and cast a way forward for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sibongile, and thanks, President, for your time, and to the viewers at home and the people that tuned in. We are looking forward to launching the program, and I don't want to say much more than to say that let's get you guys and the rest of us. I'll be the first student president to join your program. Let's get the members of the BMF and some senior executives and managers across all sectors of our economy and leaders to come and join the program. Thank you very much. Thanks, colleagues. Cheers, Bungi.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Mr.
you,
President.
Much appreciated, Mr. President.
Thank you, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy your evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.